Nick Ferrari now. 0345 6060 973. This is LBC. Ferrari at breakfast on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
8 minutes before 8 is the time. How special is that special relationship? What does it mean to you, to me, and to Mrs. Jones in Clapham? How does it affect her daily life? More on that in a moment. But let's turn to someone who'll be able to give us a far greater, far loftier interpretation of what it all means. I speak of Greg Hands, who's Conservative MP and International Trade Minister, and joins me now. To those who say that I'm sure it's full of good intent, but something just like the G7 is little more than a talking shop, how would you respond, Minister? Good morning.
Good morning, Nick. It's incredibly important. It's Joe Biden's first visit outside of the United States. Boris Johnson will be welcoming him today to Cornwall. The two leaders will be launching a new Atlantic Charter. 80 years ago, Winston Churchill and Franklin Delano Roosevelt launched the Atlantic Charter, mapping out how the world might look after World War II. This meeting will also sign various agreements that I think will help map out how the world will look after the pandemic. Crucial US-UK cooperation in areas like fighting the current pandemic, future pandemics, climate change, the global rules-based trading system, and more. So I think there's a lot of content in this weekend's G7 summit, particularly in the bilateral between Boris Johnson and Joe Biden.
The President, Joe Biden, has said America's back. Minister, did it ever go away? What do you interpret from those remarks?
Well, look, we definitely welcome the United States rejoining the Paris Accord on climate change, and we definitely welcome a more multilateral approach when it comes from the United States in its international dealings. As we've seen with this new Atlantic Charter, the US is very keen particularly in my area, on the global rules-based international trading system as being a really important part for those who believe in free trade, like Boris Johnson, like Joe Biden, making sure that the global rules-based trading system, the World Trade Organization and so on, work better, work well. I think that's a big part of it.
So the Prime Minister agrees with free trade, but he's got problems with sausages, Minister. Can I put to you that situation regarding Northern Ireland has gone from bad to worst?
Well, as somebody who's married to somebody German, I appreciate the pun, Nick.
Well done. And coming from the sun, it was always going to be there, I assure you, Greg. It's been lurking within me. I've just needed the headline. But anyway, Joe Biden says the Prime Minister stoked tensions in Northern Ireland. Is the peace deal in jeopardy, Minister?
Well, we absolutely agree with Joe Biden and the United States on the importance of the Good Friday Agreement. Don't forget the US is a co-guarantor. The US was a big part of that negotiation at the time. Senator George Mitchell, who was Bill Clinton's special representative to Northern Ireland, a rough contemporary of Joe Biden's, and Joe Biden's personal interest in the peace process is well known. We agree. We agree absolutely in the preservation of the peace process, the preservation of the Good Friday Agreement, which has held the peace for 23 years. 25 years ago, Nick, I went to Northern Ireland during the first ceasefire, the one that didn't last long back in 1994. And it didn't last long. And we've got to remember that the peace process can be fragile in Northern Ireland. We shouldn't be doing anything that goes against the peace process. That is why we need a more...
But you are. The charge d'affaires, not you personally, Mr. Hans, the charge d'affaires at the US Embassy has told Brexit Minister Lord Frost the UK stance is imperiling the peace process. And it is reported she was told to say this, to issue the rebuke, on the command of President Biden. So your government is endangering the peace process, isn't it?
Well, I disagree. What we are doing is trying to make sure that the protocol works better. It's not just about sausages. I appreciate the Wurst comment, but it's also about medicines getting from Great Britain to Northern Ireland. It's also about the travel of pets, for example. There's quite a lot of things in these important trade rules that are called sanitary and phytosanitary rules and other rules about trade between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And we need to keep that trade going.
You're an international trade minister. It is known where the EU stands on the import of certain chilled meat products. We knew this was always going to, presumably at some point, come. Why wasn't more done? Why did we sign up to this, knowing that eventually there was going to be this issue?
But it's all about how you interpret some of these rules. I don't think that any of these products...
They don't like importation of certain chilled meats and sausages. How is that down to interpretation, Mr. Hans?
OK, well, first of all, the most important thing here is peace in Northern Ireland. Secondly, what actually is the threat to public health in the European Union from moving sausages from Birmingham to Belfast, or medicines from Yorkshire to...
But that's a different point. I'm with you. I don't know what the problem is, but they do know, and that's really why you or some of your colleagues sort of said, right, they have got this issue, this is going to be something, we can't leave it to the 11th hour to tackle. And yet, I put it to you again, respectfully, you have waited until the 11th hour.
Well, no, I disagree. What it is, we granted a grace period, which is going to expire soon. We presented constructive proposals to Brussels on how we might pragmatically work a solution here. The most important thing, of course, is to preserve the peace process, but also part of that is going to be making sure that consumers in Northern Ireland continue to have access to these perfectly safe products. I'd even argue medicines, it's not just safe, but essential for safety, having access to medicines from Great Britain. That is a big, big thing for the people of Northern Ireland. And we must be able to keep that flow going in a pragmatic way, in a way that doesn't in any way threaten health and safety in the European Union.
Your international trade minister, currently, and let's hope it will always be part of the United Kingdom, there is an issue with Scotland. Around 1,000 passengers on a round Britain cruise have been refused entry to Scotland by Nicola Sturgeon, despite 3/4 of them being fully vaccinated. The ship is still stuck in Liverpool, the Scottish government saying no one will be allowed off at a stop at Greenock. How do you respond to that?
Well, look, we are one United Kingdom. I haven't seen that specific report, and I'm not exactly sure what rule is being invoked there from the Scottish government. But I would say it's very important for us to keep the free flow of people within the United Kingdom, It's an essential part of being in the United Kingdom, but I haven't seen the specific report about this cruise ship.
Okay. A couple of last things, noting that sadly your family has been touched by the impact of COVID and coronavirus, and my sympathy with your father some time ago. Do you think the country will unlock on June the 21st, Minister?
Well, that'll be for a decision next week. We won't have long to wait. I'm expecting the decision to be made early next week, probably on Monday, mapping out how we will be progressing from the 21st. One thing I might add...
Where would your tenor go? Where would you, if you had a £10 bet?
I'm not betting on it. I'm going to wait for the government announcement. One thing I would say, when it comes to travel and opening up, though, we've just launched, between President Biden and Boris Johnson, a new travel task force on reopening transatlantic travel between the US and the UK, which is a really, really important thing to be doing, not just for families, for travellers, also for investors, and those looking to those really vital economic links between the two countries. So that task force, we're hoping will see a reopening of transatlantic travel.
Hands across the sea there between the United Kingdom and the US. What about hands across the river between Barnes and Hammersmith? I know your patch stops just short, but the impact of the closure of Hammersmith Bridge is felt across the whole of that part of London. How frustrated are you on behalf of your constituents, Mr. Hands?
Well, Nick, I'm absolutely enormously frustrated by it. Hammersmith and Fulham Council closed the bridge suddenly after their failure to maintain it. They said it had been maintained perfectly up to 2016. I could even show you a council press release at the time saying everything was fine, there's no threat to the structural integrity. Suddenly closed it, failed to maintain it, and look, the government has set up a task force itself to try and get the bridge reopened. That task force is working flat out to do so under Baroness Charlotte Beer, and I hope it can be reopened as quickly as possible. We're hopeful about it being reopened to pedestrians and cyclists soon. There should be a ferry service starting, I think, from September. But what we really need is the bridge to be reopened to motor vehicles. I'm not talking just about cars, but about emergency vehicles. There were 6 bus routes going over the bridge before it was closed. It's a vital private public transport artery in London, and we need to keep the pressure on. It's Hammersmith and Fulham Council. It's their bridge. The government has offered a lot of money. Quite unusual for the government to come in and bail out a local authority for its owned assets. The government is doing absolutely the right thing. We need to see Hammersmith and Fulham Council show a more pragmatic, forward-looking approach. It's more than 2 years since it's closed. The disruption, the diverted traffic through my constituency of Fulham and Chelsea is enormous. It will only get worse as people go back to work after the pandemic.
Lastly, noting you went to the other place, 150 Oxford Dons are refusing to teach in the row over the Rhodes must fall statue. They don't want to boycott, they don't want to give any lessons. They want to boycott Oriel College until that statue comes down. I appreciate you went to Cambridge. Is this fair for the students, Mr. Hands? Should they suffer?
Well, look, I would just hope that universities get on with their actual job, which is teaching students and making sure students get the best possible degrees. I'm not, to be honest, I'm not following all the ins and outs of everything that's going on at every university, but I do wish that our focus was on learning and making sure that our students leave in a very, very difficult time for students. Leave, and a lot of them are paying a lot of money for the tuition fees and for living at university and living in those university towns. So I would just hope that universities focus on their core mission.
Grateful for your time this morning. Conservative MP for Chelsea and Fulham and International Trade Minister Greg Hands appearing here on LBC. We're at 2 minutes after 8. News is next.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, Joe Biden and Boris Johnson are due to discuss how to resume transatlantic travel when they hold their first face-to-face talks